Alright, looks like we're good. Nice. Alrighty, so, yep, everything's good. Yep, sounds looking good. Alright, I think we're pretty much ready to go then. Greetings everyone, I am Dr. J, and welcome to what will probably be the last major update of the year. Well, what should be the last major update of the year. For those of you who are newer to the channel, since that I don't post super frequently, I like to try and keep up, post regular updates in order to let you know how things are going, how things have been going, what's coming along the pipeline. And for more regular updates, I've got Discord, which I'm able to post near real-time updates to, just to say, hey, I reached this major milestone, isn't that nice? Or if you want something more monthly, over in the community tab, we've got stuff going on there where I'll post monthly. And as something more visible, since that not everybody will notice the community tab, I also do these small streams every 6 months. And today on the docket, it's going to be interesting because there's an interesting year to look back on, honestly, with how hectic it's been. It may not necessarily seem it with how quiet the first half of the year was, but it's been a hectic one for me. And it'll be nice to look back on, I suspect, and I've got a lot planned for the next year, so there'll be a lot to talk about in that respect as well. So, apart from that, as per usual, in order to ensure that you're not just staring at a blank screen for its entirety, I'm digging Torchlight 2 back out. I continue to be surprised at how well the Torchlight 3 video I put out in 2021 is doing. Consistently surprised by how well it's doing. Actually, now that I think of it, what are the analytics on that video right now? Because it's consistently making up something like half of daily viewership. I mean, what's it at right now? Yeah, it's en route to surpass the Icewind Dale review. Oh man, at this rate, it's gonna be my most popular video ever within a year. That's simultaneously flattering and honestly kind of sad. I mean, I'd like it to be something more positive, but then again, I did somewhat engage in clickbait with the title. Only somewhat, to be fair, because it is a tragic disappointment, but all the same. Torchlight 2 is something that I've spent a lot of time with, so it's something that I can very easily play while still trying to hold a cogent conversation, or cogent monologue as the case may be. So, it should make a nice thing to watch while I attempt to not die. Unfortunately for me, it's going to be a little trickier this time because this is the character that I've got in front of you right now is a character that's a hardcore run, actually. I started this one over on my other channel, Dr. J Unscripted, in order to introduce that audience to the Torchlight 2 retrospective that came out a few months ago. Because I ended up building two very different audiences on YouTube, and two very small audiences, admittedly, but for this one it's much more scripted content, very focused on what's immediately at hand. And then I have another channel called Dr. J Unscripted where I do Let's Plays and live streams, and that's much more moment to moment, and it's actually kind of funny. The one time that I tried, a couple times when I've tried to shield this channel over there, that I got a comment saying, like, you sound like you're dead inside in your videos. I'm sat there going, thanks, man. To be fair, I am trying to be very serious and I'm scripting everything out, so it's not entirely unexpected that that would end up sounding that way, but all the same, interesting to see the differences there. Regardless, we've got a lot to talk about, so we'll go ahead and get into gameplay as I remind myself of the controls real quick. It has been a while since I touched this game because I've been very busy with everything else. So, let's see, what's first on the docket? Well, I guess to start us off, since I've already done some of the shilling I need to do for the sake of the Discord and the Unscripted channel, both of them opportunities to see how I'm doing more regularly. Next on the docket is to look at how the year's been. And honestly, to explain that, I feel it's important to do a bit of a rambly story about that dates all the way back to 2020. I've told it in bits and pieces already and probably have repeated it a couple times on these updates, but since these are only 6 months apart, I can usually get away with repeating some details anyway. So, the short version is that when 2020 came around, my initial thoughts, since that I had a relatively stable job in software that thankfully I was able to keep, is that I'd have plenty of time to see to YouTube. And technically speaking, that was correct, although being forced to be alone is very different from choosing to be alone, and because I had no schedule, it meant that despite starting the year strong with finally putting out a massive review on Fire Emblem Three Houses, 2020 was not as much happened in 2020 as I might have wanted. And so, going into 2021, near the end of the prior year, I did one of these channel update streams, actually. This is the first time I did that. And I decided, alright, you know what? I need to be more consistent and more honest about the time I'm throwing at this if I truly do want to make it into something more than just a casual hobby. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to post videos monthly. And at the time, it seemed like a really good idea. And to be fair, for the first half of the year, it was a really good idea. And the simple reason for that is... Ah, crap, it's teleporting. Give me a second. I have to play this more carefully than usual because it's a hardcore character. I can't afford to be getting myself killed, otherwise this is gonna... Well, to be fair, I can always just switch over to an engineer or something if I do get mulched, but still, rather avoid that if I can. Anyway, getting back on topic. Bam. So, looking at 2021, I said, alright, you know what, monthly schedule. And at the time, it seemed like a really good idea because not only would it give me an opportunity to see, okay, how well do I do when I'm put under a time constraint? Which, to be fair, that part did go pretty well. It also gave me an opportunity, well, everything seemed to be working in my favor for the first half of the year. And the simple reason for that is I had plenty to talk about. Going into that year, I had a review for Icewind Dale 2 that I could put out that was almost already somewhat close to completion. I had plenty of other games to talk about with Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and Valkyria... Well, not Valkyria Chronicles 4, that was later. The first game is the one I talked about toward the start of 2021. And as a result of that, and more to the point, for when I didn't necessarily have a new game that I really desperately wanted to talk about, I had a long-term project that I could naturally segment into multiple videos, so at the time it seemed like it would work out really well. It was a little down to the wire sometimes, but for the most part, can't really complain about that first half, especially since the Torchlight 3 video came out around that time as well. But then when you get to the later half of the year, everything, well, the thread basically unraveled in every way that it could unravel. To start with, there were, well, part of the benefit of not having a strict schedule on YouTube is that you can take all the time you need in order to perfect whatever you wish to put out, at least in theory. It is good sometimes to eventually call it quits because the perfect can get in the way of the good, and that's somewhat what I was trying to avoid with the monthly schedule, to not just overly obsess about all the little things when it came to stuff like audio editing. And to be fair, I get a little obsessive with that. Anyway, my roommate gets annoyed with how many times I'll do retakes, and even if it doesn't necessarily sound like it, if my voice ever feels unnatural or if there's ever a point where it sounds like 2 takes were stitched together, probably was, honestly. Because I do a lot to try and make sure that I'm clear, and unfortunately that can it can be difficult to strike the balance between making my voice sound natural as opposed to, well, ensuring that I am clear and concise. So that is one thing I'll have to work, that's something I'll need to work on and probably continuously need to work on, because public speaking does not come naturally to me. The only reason I'm doing half as well as I'm doing right now is because I've had plenty of time to mull over this. So with that in mind, so going into the second half of the year, basically everything that could go wrong did go wrong. To start with, there were a couple of things that I had thought about talking about that, honestly, I just ended up not really feeling all that enthusiastic about. You had, well, there were 2 things anyway. So one of them was the latest Star Wars TV show at the time, which was The Bad Batch, which I was thinking of making a review on after watching it with my brother. And then another thing was to talk about Orcs Must Die 3, which is a tower defense game, something I haven't covered on this channel. Jeez, where's all that damage coming from? Oh, small stuff. So, I was thinking, oh, these 2 will be great. Unfortunately, as I'm trying to draft scripts and get started with the actual work, I'm realizing, I don't really feel strongly about this. And I don't really, well, and it's not like the Torchlight 3 video where I had a lot of investment in, oh my gosh, something I really like ended up being a resounding meh, what the hell. This was a matter of, oh, Star Wars is a resounding meh? Okay. And, oh, Orcs Must Die 3, I mean, I like the second game, but it's been a while since I played it. Orcs Must Die Unchained was weird, but I'm one of those weirdos who actually liked the PvP portion of Orcs Must Die Unchained. That was an interesting part in that franchise where they tried to add Dota-style elements to a tower defense game. I liked it, but then again, I like League of Legends, so take that as you will. So, putting all that aside, when Orcs Must Die 3 came out as well, I'm sat there going, this is not as good as Orcs Must Die 2. It's a return to form in the sense that it is more in line with what they put out previously, and in terms of overall design, it's not the worst, but I'm sat there going, the new guys aren't nearly as funny as the old guys. And that was part of the draw for Orcs Must Die, is that it just didn't seem as bombastic as before. So, as a result, I was having trouble figuring out what to say for Orcs Must Die 3, and with the Bad Batch, I got so far as to start recording stuff after finishing a script. I've still got it on my hard drive somewhere, but I listened to the first recording chunk that I had done and realized, no, this ain't gonna work. So, because of that, suddenly I have holes in the schedule that I need to try and account for, which meant I'm relying more on the long-term project to try and fill those gaps, and eventually it reaches a point where I'm making stuff because I need to fill time in a schedule and not because I really want to talk about it, which, when you're doing something as a hobby, is a recipe for getting burned out fast. So, towards the end of 2021, I decided, alright, you know what? Stop worrying about your neat little timetable. Clearly this monthly schedule was a good experiment. You've got a good idea as to how long it can take for you to get a video done now, which is good. Because I used it as a time to actually do the math to say, okay, this is how long I take with the audio editing portion, this is how long it takes for the video stuff, this is generally how many times I go through the polish phase where I'll render the whole thing and then just sit there and make sure that all the little things are taken care of. Okay, now that I know that, hopefully I can just move into the new year and figure out, hopefully something that has a bit more of a better work-life balance, for lack of a better phrase. It also didn't help that towards the second half of 2021, stuff started opening back up and life got busy again, so the time I had in 2020 rapidly vanished. So, towards the end of 2021, I decided, alright, you know what? You need to do something completely different. You need to just sit down and say, hey, I wanted to play something else. A lot of what I've been playing right now has just been replaying stuff in order to try and ensure that I'm on point for stuff that I eventually want to talk about somewhere down the line, but I'm not exactly giving myself a whole lot of time to actually work on that anyway. So you know what you're going to do? You're going to dig out something from your backlog and you're going to end the year with that. And what I ended up choosing was Valkyria Chronicles 4. And in case the fact that, well, I think that speaks for itself given that I did not end 2021 with Valkyria Chronicles 4, but instead that video came out, well, ended up being a longer video that came out in the middle of this year. Excuse me. Bit congested lately, so nothing too serious, hopefully. I don't know. It's congestion for the last few days. It's probably nothing. And if it is something, well, I should be fine. Anyway, getting back on topic. Ah, crap. Sorry, I clicked out of the window for a second. I have to have this in windowed mode because I'm using a 4K monitor. And my graphics card was not designed for it, so I've got it in windowed mode and accidentally clicked out while trying to avoid this thing. Why will you not? Alright, there we go. Alright, I should be able to talk properly now, hopefully. So, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, Valkyria Chronicles 4. So, even after saying that, okay, we'll end the year with this, it'll be great, and even after having a fun time with that game, even after everything seemed to be going pretty well with respect to that, I ended up running into another problem that I didn't expect. Specifically, that, well, I had a lot more to say on the game than I thought. Because to be fair, I had a decent amount to say about the first Valkyria Chronicles game. Looked like it had opened for a second. Probably just need to hit a brazier or two. So, either way, me getting distracted by the game aside, I ended up having a lot more to say about it than I thought because there ended up being a major issue with the plot that ended up having a substantial effect on pretty much the entire game, so I felt it necessary to go into probably more detail than I needed to just to demonstrate the scale of the problem, even though effectively how a singular sentence can completely derail a story thread. That was effectively what it boiled down to for those of you who haven't seen that video. And as a result of that, I found myself realizing, oh crap, this is going to be a long one. It's not quite as bad as the Fire Emblem Three Houses video, where I spent 2.5 hours on that game, but, well, 1.5 hours was the end runtime. So at the time I had to basically choose, okay, are you going to split this video in half to end the year with something? Or are you going to abandon the monthly schedule before when you said you were going to? You said that you were going to stick with it, well, promised that you were going to stick with it towards it until at least the end of the year, so are you going to be able to hold to that? And, well, I was not. Because even if I had committed to trying to make sure that it was, well, even if I had committed to trying and get that video done, I would have had to give up basically all social outings during the Christmas season, and, no thank you. This is, as much as I would like this to be my job one day, it is still very much a hobby, so it didn't make sense to me to hold fast to it, given that basically even as I'm trying to do something different, the problems with the monthly schedule keep cropping up. And so, all this to say, going into this year, my objective was simple: find a healthy medium. And I'm pleased to say that, as far as I'm concerned, I have found that healthy medium. Because even if I didn't abide by a monthly schedule on the outside, even if it's still very much been, well, even if uploads have been seemingly inconsistent as a result, I have been consistent about a couple of things. To be specific, every day I've been committing to doing at least a little bit of audio editing. So, to give an idea of what that means, audio editing for me tends to be the slow step. Visually speaking, my videos are fairly simple because when you're doing gameplay, you don't really need to be super fancy or engage in a lot of fancy editing. You just need to have, basically, as far as I'm concerned, all you really need for gameplay videos, well, for gameplay reviews, is that apart from making sure that you have properly demonstrated that this is what it's supposed to look like, that what you're showing on the screen matches what you're talking about, it's usually fine. The important part is to make sure that your arguments are good and to make sure that you are being clear about and concise. Sometimes that still means going into excruciating detail, and I'm not more than willing to engage in that excruciating detail when necessary, but at the same time, it's a matter of it's avoiding repeating yourself and making sure that you are giving proper arguments. Which is also why I script everything out. Even now I've got a basic outline, even though I've mulled over this so much that I don't need to rely on it too much this time. Probably for the best, because I'm needing to focus on the game more than usual. Ow. And that's why I need to focus more on the game. I get dropped to 0 and it's over. Alright, let's bring it down to where I can... Ooh, actually. Well, if you're frozen, come on, apply the... Alright, damage over time is applied. And done. So, anyway. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, what I've been doing in the background. So, by holding to getting at least a little bit of audio editing done in the background, I've thankfully been able to hold pretty strong with at least getting something done every day, ensuring that I'm making a little bit of progress. That then means as I'm working on the Valkyria Chronicles 4 review, when Star Wars does something that annoys me, I've got the opportunity to pivot to it without too much concern. When something else comes up, like Pokemon Legends Arceus, and I really want to talk about that, that's fine, just switch tack for the moment and then jump back to Valkyria Chronicles 4 as you're able. So, it ended up working out really well. And the timing ended up working out really well this year as well, given that I was able to... I was able to focus on... Well, after the update stream last... Well, when was it? August? Or was it... Well, whenever the mid-2022 channel update happened, it was actually an ideal situation because I had the Torchlight 2 retrospective I wanted to do, the time with the 10-year anniversary, so I could focus on getting that done, and then once I've finished that out and realized, alright, you know what, you've hit the point of diminishing returns with respect to the polish phase, so it's pretty much good to go, switch over and talk about Sonic Origins. And that's actually kind of funny in that respect. That's where things have been really busy lately, because the Unscripted channel has been doing surprisingly well lately. I'm quite happy with that too, because it'll be nice once that I can get the ball rolling on... When I can get the ball rolling on both of them, because they are two very different audiences, which means... It means if one has trouble, I'll at least have the other, if I'm ever able to do this full time. So, and what's been prompted that one to do well were effectively a couple of Sonic streams that did really well. Because what ended up happening is that I was digging through stuff in my backlog to clear out, my video game backlog I should say. And as a result of that I thought, you know, there's a bunch of Sonic games you haven't played yet. I mean, the 3D ones are of dubious quality, but you know what? Sonic Adventure 2, why not? And then I see that one doing a little better than usual, and I'm thinking, the second Sonic movie is right around the corner. What if I just do Sonic 2, since that might be algorithm fuel? It was algorithm fuel, my gosh. So, I just need to get the people who subscribe from that used to the idea that it's a variety channel, and I'll be good to go, basically. Well, here's hoping anyway. I suppose time will tell, won't it?
Welcome, human.
For now, then. So, that was what prompted me to... Well, that was how I learned about Sonic Origins, and that's what prompted me to cover it. And especially... It was actually kind of funny because I'd spent a lot of time with the 2D Sonic games as a result of those streams doing well, because I figured, okay, you know what, this will be fun. I can always look back on the ones I haven't played, and even look back on the ones I have played. It'll be a fun time. And to be fair, it was a fun time, but then you get to Sonic Origins and you realize, oh crap, they messed it up royally. So, yeah, gave me plenty to talk about, for better or worse. Gave me plenty to talk about. Especially since I don't get to talk about how, well, all the stuff auxiliary to games very often. That was an interesting subject to delve into there as well. The fact that I could say, hey, here's all this other stuff like Denuvo that's really obnoxious and meant that I'm never touching the PC version with a 10-foot pole because I like my SSD and don't want it mulched by one too many read statements. To be fair, I didn't include that part in the actual video because that one's it's not as definitive if I recall correctly. The notion that Denuvo's DRM will cause one too many read statements and cause your SSD's lifespan to drop precipitously. That's not as definitive but from what I remember, but I did include the parts of, this has had a negative effect on game performance, and why are you including this kind of DRM in the first place? What? Especially for a game like Sonic Origins, where these games have existed for a long time, and yet you have to delist the previous ones on the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis Classics versions on Steam just to convince me to buy this? I mean, I already have them, so I don't need to worry about it, but for new people, why would you do that? Especially when your quote classic versions end up changing the game in a couple insubstantial ways as well, so it was certainly a fun topic to talk about. So yeah, and that was partially prompted by the Unscripted channel, and there is that nice little crap. Oh crap, I don't have Frost Phase, I just realized. Why did I not get the teleporting button yet? I went for this instead of the teleporter? What is wrong with me? Oh man, this won't kill me. This is gonna hurt. Okay, do not let him touch you. Okay, good. God, this is an area with frost everywhere and I didn't go for the teleport button. Wait, I do have the teleport button? Why am I not using it? Okay, now I know I'm an even greater moron. What the hell? Did I just unlock that with the last time I played this? What is wrong with me? Oh man, I suck. Anyway, getting back on topic. I am clearly someone who is well educated to talk about Torchlight 2, which is... well, to be fair. It seems like the Torchlight 2 video has been lifted up a little bit by all the attention the Torchlight 3 video is getting, so at least I can rest easy on that front. I'll have to do another Diablo-style game at some point next year, though with everything on the horizon, I don't know if I'll necessarily have time for it. So, I guess that brings us neatly to what to look forward to next year. So, on that front, it's going to be a really interesting year. So, now that I've just gone through the whole history, as it were, of the channel and where things are, now comes the really interesting part, and the part that you're probably most interested in. What's next? And to that end, I think the best way to describe it is that, well, over the course, I think looking at how things were back then with me getting caught up in the moment with Sonic Origins, with other games, especially during 2020 where there wasn't a Through the Looking Glass review. And because I keep finding myself getting caught up in new stuff to talk about, whether it be Pokemon Legends Arceus or Sonic Origins, And to be fair, Sonic Origins isn't, quote, new. It could still count as an older game, but I did get my start looking at older games from the perspective of a newcomer, so it is certainly something to remember that, hey, there is this aspect of my channel that shouldn't be neglected as well. And there is a decent amount of my backlog that has had to be either dropped or something else to that effect over the course of the last few years, especially while I was doing the Fire Emblem Three Houses video. So, if this last year was the opportunity to... How have I been dividing these? If this last year was the opportunity to try and find a healthy medium, this year is the year where the project backlog is going to take the fore. It's going to take a much greater priority. I already have a rule in place where I'm not allowed to buy any more video games until 2 have been cleared from my backlog. To put it another way, for every game I buy, I must commit to finishing it plus something else from my backlog. That way, independent of being given anything by friends or family, I can at least slowly whittle down how much I'm playing, and it forces me to really consider, okay, is this something that I will actually play? Because if I don't play it, then that means I gotta play something else in order to... Ah, crap. I love this section. Frost is the worst. So if I don't play whatever I buy, then I gotta play something else, or commit to something else. So it forces me to really figure out, okay, what do I value most? What am I really interested in right now? Am I just buying into mindless hype, or is this something that I genuinely am interested in? And I think that is an important question that needs to be asked when you're doing this sort of thing, is that... Second? Alright, cool. Sorry, I needed to check on something. So, that is something important that needs to be discussed, is that are you actually prioritizing something that is worth prioritizing? Are you just getting swept up in hype? Are you actually going to commit to this? And I feel like I've been letting the latest and greatest thing draw my eye for a little too long within the last, I don't know, 3 years at this point? God, I have been doing this for a while. Way to make myself feel old. Not even in my 30s yet. What am I doing? Oh, crap. Alright, you know what? Have this. You want to come any closer, you deal with that. Or you just pay attention to my pet, I guess. There we go. Just wait for that to pass. Of course it goes through that. Anyway. So, what was I talking about? Alright, yeah. So... what was I talking about? Crap, the fun part of live streaming, I guess. So, oh yeah, backlog stuff. So, I'm going to be applying I guess the short version then is that I'm going to be applying the same rule that I've been using for my video game backlog to my project backlog. And my project backlog at this point is basically anything that I have either purchased or started playing, or maybe even have scattered scripts for, that at some point I might want to make a video on. There will be stuff that's added and subtracted independent of the actual rule itself. At least with what I already own, because I might find out that I don't really have a lot to say in a particular game, or I might find out that... or I might be reminded of something really nice that might be worth covering, such as, say, for a retrospective. But for the most part... let's see, where am I? Alright, cool. But for the most part... whenever I am looking to actually buy a new game with the intention of covering it for YouTube, I must first be willing to clear out some of my backlog. And fortunately, I'm in a really good position to follow through on that. Because technically, this video is, well, technically, I was going to say that it starts at basically 0 from this live stream onward, but technically it's going to be starting at 0.5, as in anticipation of this, I've already made sure to put time into this by going through and digging out a game from my backlog that will be releasing as a proper Through the Looking Glass review immediately after this stream is done. And I have not done a proper Through the Looking Glass review in a very long time, so it will be very good to get back in the saddle for that. And I think it will be just good in general to have more variety on the channel anyway. And it's going to be a nice video, hopefully. It's a very different tack than I normally go with, but you know what? That's kind of the point of Through the Looking Glass, to go for stuff that I might not have necessarily thought about or necessarily seek out on my own as well, because I do have my strategy game and RPG niche, and that is where I thrive, but it's always good to try and cover other stuff just in case. And in this case, it's going to be Grim Fandango, a full-blown point-and-click. Back in ye olden days when LucasArts existed and didn't suck. Remember LucasArts? Oh man. That's how I'm showing my age. How long has it been since it was shuttered? Since the Disney acquisition back in what? 2012? 2013? Somewhere in that ballpark? Yeah, it's been a while. I really should pay more attention to my inventory. Anyway. So, corollary to that, that will be the video that we'll be releasing immediately after this. And as a result, what this will mean in practice is that, at least for the start of the year, it's going to effectively regulate how much I'm allowed to be swept up by the initial hype by something, because there honestly is a lot to look forward to this upcoming year, because you've got with the Game Awards recently, you've got a release date for Baldur's Gate 3, which, I mean, Baldur's Gate 3 is amazing, so, well, Baldur's Gate 2 is amazing, I should say. No idea about Baldur's Gate 3. So, oh man, when I was replaying that back in college, wait, what the hell am I doing? Alright, shift click, you dumb. That's how you kill that without risking your life. Anyway, so when I was replaying Baldur's Gate 2 after finishing up my review of the first game, I had to be very careful about when I played it because I was still in college at the time, and let's just say that if I played it outside of the weekend, nothing would get done. And I had to be very careful which weekend to play it on as a corollary to that, so, because I would just play for 6 hours straight or something ridiculous like that, or 9 hours in a weekend. Getting up for food and other necessities, don't mind you, but still. That was an obsession for a while. Especially since I didn't feel a need to record it as a Let's Play, because back then I was trying to record basically everything as a Let's Play, for better or worse. Don't do that as much now, but still. All that to say, plenty to worry about. And now that you're frozen, there we go. So, yeah, as a result of that, I'm going to need to be very careful when Baldur's Gate 3 comes out. And on top of that, there's all sorts of other cool stuff on the horizon. Hades 2 got announced. We still don't know when Hollow Knight Silksong's coming out, but hopefully at some point between now and the heat death of the universe. We've got the Advance Wars remaster that at some point might be let out of the dungeon. Cough, cough, hint, hint, Nintendo, you cowards. I've been wanting that game for way too damn long. Ever since it was announced, I was unironically more hyped for the Advance Wars remaster than I was for Metroid Dread and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom combined. And that was back when we didn't have a name for Tears of the Kingdom either. Although, to be fair, I'm not one for open world games, so Breath of the Wild didn't appeal to me all that much, but all that to say, yeah. There's a lot on the horizon, and a lot to look forward to, but having a rule that I have to get through my project backlog before I can go overboard, that should help moderate that, to ensure that I'm only focusing on what I'm absolutely sure I want to cover, and ensure that I'm focused on and also ensure that Through the Looking Glass actually keeps its proper place on the channel, where I actually am looking at the older stuff just as much as the new. So, I'm hoping that it'll be a good shift as well, and at this point, what I'm expecting, at least for the first half of the year, I don't have a strict timetable, or at least not one that I'm willing to commit to right now. But as of right now, Pillars of Eternity continues to be priority 1. It was technically priority 1 leading up to me working on the Grim Fandango video, but I'll talk about why that keeps getting delayed in a little bit, but I'm expecting that the Pillars of Eternity review, barring something unexpected, should be next. It's still a little up in the air as to whether that'll happen or how exactly it'll all play out, but that is what how I'm expecting things to play out. Wait, what the hell? I haven't seen that bug in a while. That's how I'm expecting things to play out. But, anyway, putting that aside, what I'm expecting this to happen is that Pillars of Eternity, as something in my backlog, will then allow me to look at another game, and knowing my luck, it will probably be Fire Emblem Engage. I don't expect to have as much to say on this one as I did on what's it called? On Fire Emblem Three Houses, because it seems like it's a nostalgia bait game more so than it is. Well, technically it's a mainline entry, but since it's engaging in nostalgia bait, I am not expecting to have as much to say on it, and so I don't expect it to turn into a long-term project like what we've got with, well, Fire Emblem Three Houses. I keep repeating that one. And because of that, my thinking right now is that, actually if I've got the Thunder Locust, I may as well put the Lightning Brand out. So what I'm thinking for inking right now is that I should be able to cover Pillars of Eternity, and at that point I will be able to commit to Fire Emblem Engage officially, ensure that that gets done, and worst case scenario, if Pillars of Eternity needs to be delayed further, I've got another idea that I'm not going to talk about just yet. I'm going to keep my cards a little close to my chest on that one. And then, once we get closer to August, I can start worrying about, well, depending on how close we get to August in that time, I can start worrying about what to do corollary to Baldur's Gate 3. Because what I'm expecting to happen there is I'll probably want to fragment it, so in order to ensure that it doesn't just outright consume my life, I'll probably constrain it to weekly live streams over on my Unscripted channel, which should be a lot of fun if the Pillars of Eternity streams were any indication. But, corollary to that, alright, I just have to dodge them at this point. Corollary to that, it also means that I'm going to want to have something else to put out, possibly around that time, possibly later, but what I'm thinking is, and that's something that I'll be... Actually, I may as well just throw the link into the description right now. Give me a second. Although, actually, I'll throw it in the chat and in the description, because I've actually got a couple of ideas as to what I would want to do corollary to... What's it called? I can't do English today. Sorry, I'm trying to type in. Throw stuff around as much. Let's see. And then I'll just... Yeah, that should be fine. And then let me just... I'll just do this in chat as well. Cool. There we go. So, in the community tab, alongside everything else that's going on there, I will occasionally ask for feedback as to what exactly I should play next. And I've got a couple of options to play alongside Baldur's Gate 3, or at least what to play in anticipation of it. And here are my ideas, just as of right now. Option number 1, Divinity Original Sin. I'm not sure if this one will be able to compete with the other two, but since that Baldur's Gate 3 is a product of Larian Studios instead of BioWare, I'm thinking it might be good to look at least one of the games that Larian has done, just to see, okay, this is generally what they're about, this is generally how they make their games. It's probably going to be mechanically different, if only because... Oh crap, that was... Oh shit, run. Excuse me, pardon my language. That was scary. I did not realize how much damage I was taking, holy crap. This is why it is very difficult to play an Ember Mage in hardcore mode, holy crap. Anyway, putting that aside... Okay, hang on a second. Alright, sorry, that rattled me. Whew. I've had more than a few Ember Mages die here. This is one that often claims them because of just how... Well, the slow effect really does them in. That's the short version. So, putting that aside. So, that's one option to play, because I'm thinking it could be nice to have something around the release date of Baldur's Gate 3, if only to engage in search engine optimization, and I've got 3 ideas that are in my backlog. One is Divinity Original Sin. I do have the second game, but I want to look at the first one since that I've heard nothing but good things about the sequel and want to see what the original's all about. So that's my thinking there. That's one option. Option number 2, we can see exactly where all of the ideas for the original ideas for Baldur's Gate 3 went by looking at Dragon Age Origins, because that is where a lot of the original ideas for Baldur's Gate 3 from BioWare then went. So I think it could be nice to check out and see exactly what they initially thought they could do with it, even if it ended up getting rolled in or reincorporated into something completely different. I think that could be really interesting. Or, we could just abandon all pretense, and I could do a retrospective on Baldur's Gate 2. I have no idea which one's going to reign supreme. I have my guess as to which one will win out. I kind of have my preference, to be fair, and it's not for the one I think will win. But you know what? The people shall decide, and that will be the end of that, and I will not raise complaints. So that's something that I'll need to think about over the course of... Well, and honestly, I'm in a good position to actually play that as well, given the circumstances, because as of right now, I've got a couple of longer games that have been occupying a decent chunk of my time over the last year or so, because both of them weeb shit, unfortunately. For better or worse. And for whatever reason, weeb trash doesn't seem to do well on this channel. Or as well, maybe. Then again, it's not as if I've been... Well, it's not as if I got my start with weeb trash anyway, so I probably shouldn't be surprised. Although, if we are doing Through the Looking Glass, and if we are focusing on older stuff, Nintendo games and other such things are inevitably going to show up, so... Eventually it'll get there, but for now. Although I do have an idea as to how I might be able to change that up, but I'll speak more on that in a little bit. So, either way, that's generally what I'm expecting to play out for this year, at least for the first half of the year. Planning more than 6 months ahead usually isn't a good idea, but at least for the first half of the year, what I'm expecting is that most of my time initially is going to be focused on trying to finish the Pillars of Eternity review. I've recorded most of the audio I need, and have edited about half of it. And so I think I'm at the 22-minute mark as far as audio editing is concerned. And that's not including the spoiler section. Basically, I've recorded everything that isn't the spoiler section. So, as far as Pillars of Eternity is concerned, that's what we've got to worry about there. I should be able to get it out. I'm not going to say when I'm aiming to get it out by, but I do have a time in mind. And if I miss that, I can always substitute something else in. But after that, after I finish something, I'll be able to go ramble on about Fire Emblem Engage, or I'll feel more at liberty to do so. And then, depending on the timing, I'll either find something else to talk about, or I can dig something out for my backlog, corollary to Baldur's Gate 3, and then, well, BG3 will happen when it happens. If it ends up being even half as good as Baldur's Gate 2, that's gonna be a fun video. So, I guess on that note, I guess the only other major thing worth mentioning is just generally what to expect from, well, a bit of a shift that I'm going to be doing on this channel. Because the short version is that if I truly do want this to do well in the long term and to reach the point where I could live off of it, I'm going to need to do better to stand out. And part of this is by, well, it's one thing to be able to properly present a point, and I feel like I have done a decent job at refining that aspect. But the problem is I haven't done a very good job at marketing myself and standing out within, well, just the general sphere. Whenever I've been handing my channel off to, well, whenever I've told people about the YouTube stuff I do and they show interest and I give them the channel, what I usually have to do in order for them to find it is I have to either give them a link, well, a direct link, or I have to, well, if they're just searching it up, I have to basically tell them, search for Dr. J Torchlight 3, that'll get it to show up. And yeah, it usually does work, to be fair, because it's right there. And it is it's my third most watched review now, and far less time than it took for the Baldur's Gate review to get up to number 1. That concerns me. Oh, and it is a good thing, to be fair, but I'm sat there going, kind of tragic, but what can you do? Besides complain bitterly and hope to do better. And hope to get people's attention with other stuff. Either way, putting my first world problems aside, let me think, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so in order to stand out better, I'm going to eventually be doing a soft rebrand of sorts at some point next year. Now, I'm not going to change my name. I don't think it would be a good idea to change my name even if I wanted to. There is somebody else associated with that name, and I guess to give some background, the name I used for this channel was from a nickname I got back in high school. And I didn't realize until later that it's actually, well, the reason that I was called that was because they knew, I think, a basketball player who went by that. Although, since that I don't play basketball and don't keep up with the scene, well, 3 guesses as to, well, 3 guesses as to how well I knew that. As to how much I knew about that particular aspect. So, because of that, well, didn't end up realizing that I had shot myself in the foot a little bit there, but that's alright. So my thinking is, if I'm to stand out properly, I need to make sure that it doesn't make sense to change my name at this point, given that, well, I've used the name Dr. J for so long that, and there's bound to be plenty of people like me who don't know about the other associations, so my thinking is, okay, just make it your own then. But in order to do that, you're gonna need to visually stand out more. And so for the last, I'd say, couple of years or so, I've been trying to teach myself how to draw. That might seem like overkill, given that theoretically I could just commission someone to do that for me, but honestly, for a couple other things that I'd like to do at some point in my life, it would make sense to know how to draw anyway, because I am a software guy, and it is harder to teach a software guy to draw than it is to teach an artist to code. So, if I wanted to get into game dev, I've already taken the path of greatest resistance, but c'est la vie. But my thinking is that if I do want to get into game dev, and even if I end up staying within the software sphere I currently am, if I'm ever going to be doing front-end stuff, it'll be good to know how to code. Well, it'll be good to know how to draw, I should say. I already know how to code, what the hell? It would be good to understand exactly what... how do I frame it? It'll be good to know how to draw. Even if I'm not the one making the final artwork, it'll be good to at least be able to draw concept art. To say, this is generally what I'm looking for. This is the kind of style I'm looking for. This is what I would like whatever I'm working on to look like. And this is the reason why the Pillars of Eternity review has been held back forever and a half, because I wanted to use the Pillars of Eternity review as effectively a jumping off point. Because with how well CRPGs have done on this channel, my first thought was, okay, you know what? Make this one special. Make a big deal out of this one by giving CRPGs their own little series on your channel, like Through the Looking Glass, except geared specifically toward this genre, for people who already are invested in this genre, which, to be fair, bit niche, but you know what? It'll be a good opportunity to experiment with, say, just drawing assets and having an actual avatar and changing up your video editing style along with it. And then, if it goes well, if this grand little experiment goes well, I can then translate that to the rest of my YouTube stuff. I can vary things up a little bit with Through the Looking Glass, make it look more professional. I can vary things up with, well, I can branch things out to make any time I look at Weeb Trash a little more distinct, because I've already got an idea for Weeb Trash where I effectively roast it just as much as I critique it. So, yeah, I think if ever there was a time to engage in an experiment like that, I feel like now is the time. So, I'm probably gonna have much of December. Well, I know that I've only got, well, let's see, there are only a couple weeks left in December, and I don't have any plans to travel right now. So, I'm gonna have plenty of time to myself to think over what exactly I want to focus on, and how I want to go about this. Make sure that I get the assets down to a T, and get plenty of time to make sure that the audio component for the Pillars of Eternity review is still on point as well. So, my feeling is, I'm in an ideal time to capitalize, so why not take the plunge? Should be interesting. So, that is the general plan then, and I'm going to be using that to figure out exactly what works and what doesn't. And along with that, I'm going to be doing a soft rebrand where I'll be changing up the profile icons, where I'll be adding banner artwork to both the review and unscripted channel. And with any luck, I'll be able to go into the rest of the year able to stand out better, and as a result, be easier to search. Well, be easier to search for within YouTube's algorithm, and hopefully let that translate to greater success. Hopefully allow it to snowball from there. Holy crap, that's a lot of enemies. Just keep spamming. So that's the idea as of right now. As to how well it'll end up going, well, I guess time will tell, won't it? But we shall see. We shall see. So, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. Let me look over my notes real quick to see if there's anything else I want to mention. Oh, right! Long-term projects. So, the last major thing to talk about before we close it out is the status of long-term projects, because there's 3 things that I've committed to over the course of the last couple of years that at some point need to be seen to. So, for the sake of clarity, I am defining a long-term project as any video that I know will intentionally be longer than an hour. That is how I'm treating it. Effectively, videos that on their own could take anywhere from 6 months to a year to actually make, if not longer. That's the general feeling, because I don't want to reach a point where I'm just working purely on the Valkyria I don't want to reach another point where I'm just working on the Fire Emblem Three Houses review, or just working on the Valkyria Chronicles 4 review. If whatever long-term project I've got ends up being the thing I'm most interested in, I'm okay with that. But I don't want it to just be a matter of, okay, it's time to work on this, time to just disappear for the next 6 months and come out of the dungeon only after a great period of time. I want to try and be a little more careful as to when I do commit to stuff like that. So my thinking is that alongside everything else I'm going to be trying to do, I'm going to see if I can at least dedicate a day's worth that I spend on video editing toward long-term stuff. And as of right now, here are the long-term projects in reverse priority order, i.e. these are the order that they are going to be seen to last. So, last on the list is Halo the Master Chief Collection. This is something that I started back in 2021. It's the long-term project that I was able to segment into multiple videos. And the reason why it's the lowest priority is twofold. First of all, I realized halfway through making that review series that, well, the people who watch my stuff are primarily here for strategy games and RPGs, and, well, the Halo stuff didn't land. And when I say didn't land, I don't just mean didn't get as many views as the rest. I mean, I actually saw sub loss. It's not a whole lot, and it's not as if I have anything bad to say about the videos themselves. But even if you say, oh, it's fine, I don't care. If one person watches it, it's fine. It's hard not to let that get to you. Because you put in effort for stuff, and you hope that it does get seen, and then when you see people walk away, it's, okay, you know what, that's fair, but, whatever. You try and move on as best you can, but it can still get to you sometimes. Especially when it was a year where I had been effectively working myself to death and reaching the point where I was getting burned out. So, because of the association with burnout, at some points I will need to finish it, but fortunately I did reach a natural stopping point, at least for now, where I at least covered all the gameplay. So, at least for the moment, I can just call it good. Eventually, I will want to go further by looking at the story components and potentially bundling it all into one video. But for now, at this point, if I do anything with it, it'll be bundled into one video, and I don't know if it'll be just the story component or if it'll be just the gameplay plus any improvements plus plus anything beyond it, but all that to say, it is the lowest priority right now. And honestly, with how dour the Halo community is right now because of, well, everything to do with Halo Infinite and everything to do with 343 in general, well, let's just say that I'm not gonna be... Well, let's just say that there's not a whole lot of external or internal pressure to work on Halo stuff right now. It seems that it's been effectively abandoned by the longtime fans of the franchise. Either way, so, next on the list, Knights of the Old Republic. Eventually this thing will get done, but it too was somewhat a victim of the burnout from last year. In that it was one of the games I was having to spend a lot of time replaying in order to gather footage and figure out the differences between different dialogue options and all that fun stuff. So it ended up being fairly tedious, and as a result, it ended up getting thrown to the back burner. But the time that I'm going to be spending on long-term projects is geared to ensuring that, yes, this thing will get done at some point, though hopefully I'll have more to say on that towards the end of next year. Oh, hey, Shining Force King, how you doing? Unfortunately, I was wrapping up, actually. Or at least just going over the long-term projects. So, still, that is the point of the VOD, at least, because there's a lot to discuss this time. I'll do a TLDR at the end. So, and then finally, the current long-term project that's the priority... Yep, it's the latest Fire Emblem. Of course it had to be. I mean, I spent 2.5 hours on Three Houses, and then another hour once the DLC came out. And so when you announce a spin-off to that same game, yeah, I'm gonna be spending a long time with that. So that video is gonna be split into 2 parts. One part is gonna be about 45 minutes, and it's gonna be geared toward non-spoilers and how well it holds up as a video game. And then a second part is gonna be pure story, pure spoilers, which is gonna be a deep dive into, okay, does this actually hold up from an internal consistency standpoint? So, should be a fun time. Just woke up, we'll have to listen to all of this again. Not a problem, not a problem. I know that it's early in the morning for a lot of people, so I've absolutely no problem with there not being that many. It allows me to ramble if nothing else. So, that is generally the plan. So, as a TLDR, following from nearly burning out towards the end of 2021, I spent this year trying to get a better sense for what I can reasonably attend to, and I feel quite happy with what I put out this year, and I'm really looking forward to the video I'm putting out as soon as this live stream is done. To that end, I'm going to be making my project backlog a much higher priority to where I am instituting that in order to pick up another project, I must first finish 2 from my backlog. So, in short, if I am to pick up another project, I must first complete something that's already in my backlog, and then finish that project as well. So what this will mean in the short term is that the video that will be coming out after this, plus whatever I release next year, will be all from my project backlog. And it will also ensure that I don't go completely overboard and focus on Fire Emblem Engage when it releases next month, over seeing the things like the Pillars of Eternity review, which is currently on my docket as priority 1 to finish. Although, I don't know the exact timing on how things will work out, as I'm going to be attempting a soft rebrand after trying to learn how to draw. The idea there is that I want to try and stand out better, and by visually distinguishing myself, to ensure that it'll be easier to find my channel and that there's more to latch onto. Damn it, I hate this. Why does slow effects have to exist in this game? So, and then Pillars of Eternity is going to be the first experiment on trying to visually distinguish myself, which is why it's been delayed so many times. And so once that's been seen to, well, we should be in better shape to iterate and improve from there. Furthermore, I'm going to be doing something in relation to Baldur's Gate 3. Definitely playing Baldur's Gate 3 itself, but I'm going to be doing at least something in relation to it. I'm gotta pull in the community tab for whatever, well, for 3 options that might be good to release around the time that Baldur's Gate 3 releases. And apart from that, we've got a bunch of long-term projects to see too. So, it's going to be a very busy year. I'm very happy with how the year's gone, having gotten a much more stable work-life balance, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the new year has in store for us. So, yeah, that's pretty much all that needs to be said. So, if ever you want more detail than that, I've got plenty of rambling on this. Alright, let's catch up with chat, and then I guess I'll call it. Let's see, don't let me bother you, just keep going. I'm just glad you posted some grade A rambling. Much obliged, much obliged. Alrighty, let me just make sure that I don't get mulched by this. I made the mistake of using a hardcore character as the one I'm playing in this update, so... oh boy. There we go. Alrighty. Any input on New Game/Games Award? Is there any truth to any of the nominations? I'm always torn about it, because there's always a degree to which, given the nature of how embedded people are in the industry when they make it onto panels and stuff like that, there's always going to be a bias. And I know there were a lot of people who were upset about The Last of Us Part 2 getting Game of the Year last year. Honestly, from what I saw, a lot of it this year was inoffensive. Although, I was very excited about the Hades 2 announcement and the Baldur's Gate 3 release date. That I'm very much looking forward to. Hades 2 is even half as good as the first one, it is going to be glorious. Let's see. Apart from that, let's see. Anything else that really needs to be mentioned? Probably. Oh, right, the last thing that does need to be mentioned. Let me just finish off this enemy real quick, and then I will go ahead and release the next video. Actually, Shining Force King, you're going to really like this, because I know you are very partial to Through the Looking Glass. And so you will... I don't know what you'll think of this one, but I am actually, after finishing Sonic Origins and realizing, hey, it actually is kind of, and actually going through the process of realizing, yes, I should focus more on my project backlog, that's what I'm doing. So let me just go and hit the publish button on the video. And so if you so desire, next video, a proper Through the Looking Glass review of Grim Fandango is now officially uploaded. It's going to be very interesting to see how that one does, especially as a contrast to everything else I worked on this year. Alrighty, there we go. That'll be all from me, and my voice absolutely hates me after basically talking straight for the last hour. Good lord. So, hopefully the next video will be Pillars of Eternity, but I've got another idea for a game to pick up if I am unable to get that done. Because I'm playing Super Meat Boy over on my Unscripted channel right now, and it is kicking my ass. Something fierce, because I am terrible at platformers. Utterly garbage at platformers, so, it is kicking my butt. But, for the sake of Through the Looking Glass, my initial, I guess, barrier for what I considered old was 5 years, but at this point that would also include The Witcher 3, so what I'm thinking right now is that anything, in order to be consistent with what I've already put out, I'm thinking anything from the Steam indie boom or older will be considered in Through the Looking Glass. Anything newer than that will have to be filtered into something else. I've got a name already for CRPG reviews, since those will probably be fairly distinct from the rest. And I've also got another idea for what I want to do to distinguish the weeb trash. But I'm not going to name those just in case somebody runs off with those names while I'm struggling to figure out what the hell I'm doing with that. Drawing is hard, guys. Drawing hands are hard. Drawing faces are hard. Especially when it's trying to be an avatar of yourself. I mean, good lord. Oh man. Why did I try and make myself learn how to draw? It would have been so much faster to just commission someone, but you know what? It'll be important for everything else I want to do in my life, so you know what? I'll just have to live with it. This is the decision I've made. I've made my bed, now I must lie in it. Yeah, I think I've rambled enough. Christmas came early, yes, much obliged, Shining Force King. So, with that in mind, that'll be all from me. I will go ahead and leave you to the video then. And thank you all for watching, thank you all for the support over the last year, and if you ever wish to see any more updates, there will be more in the community tab. And I've also got a Discord set up, which link in the description, if you ever wish to see real-time updates. Because it's actually kind of funny, because I had posted in there that, hey, I got initial video editing done this Friday. Hey, I'll probably just do the polish phase where I just run through the rendered video and just find all the little editing mistakes and probably just knock that out over the course of this week and throw it up on Christmas Eve. And then I realized, what's stopping me from doing it yet, all of this on Saturday? Well, there were a couple of cleaning chores I had to see to, so yep. The stream is today, Grim Fandango's out today, so the review on that is out. I'll join the Discord, didn't know there was one. Yeah, I haven't advertised it a whole lot. I haven't advertised it very much at all, because it's just a matter of, I wonder how much attention this will get if I say nothing. So, either way, that'll be all from me. Thank you all for watching, I hope that this was informative to you, and I hope that what I've been putting out has been to your liking, and I hope it continues to be to your liking, and if it's ever not, well, feel free to let me know what I can improve. Because, at the end of the day, this is still a hobby for me, so I can get away with making stuff that I want to make, but if I want this to be a proper job one of these days, I do need to understand well, it's always good to have feedback on how I can improve. So, if ever you have anything that you wish for, if ever there's anything you'd like, feel free to let me know. I can't guarantee that I'll always follow through on it, because someone on my Unscripted channel had some very interesting things to say about how I speak in the scripted videos, but never mind that. I mentioned it toward the start as well. But apart from that, yeah, that's pretty much all that needs to be said. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next year. Take care, and Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate, including me. It's going to be a fun Christmas, even if